Well, hi, everybody. Good morning, and good morning, Nikki. Thank you for joining us as the middle school first rep and volunteer. I'll
Good morning.
preface everything again by saying that this stems from a conversation with the superintendent, and we were really interested in, without the fall MAP, for example, how do we approach this conversation? What is a good way to assess how the school's doing? Are students still learning as well? MAP was never everything, but it was one way to check. And so are there ways to also understand? And we talked about it, and we didn't really want to go into collecting brand new test data or anything like that. And we thought that sometimes just having the conversation with people, anecdotal evidence is an important way to approach it too, additionally. One of the articles we looked at is up on the screen. It says assessing, let me make sure sharing the screen,
Yeah, I see it.
It says assessing schools' academic quality by what students actually do. And it asks that question. It has its own answer, and there are other answers, but it does ask that question. So we'll break it open and ask Nikki what she thinks from her perspective. What do you think is the best way we should approach this question and answer this question? How can we check how we're doing, how the students are learning?
Well, I think that, in my opinion, an assessment should be a conversation between student and teacher. And I'm not necessarily talking about, it could be a face-to-face conversation, but it doesn't have to be a face-to-face conversation. It could be a feedback and then correct the feedback or implement the feedback conversation. For example, I may have an assessment. I'm not a big fan of the multiple choice, pick ABC, fill in the blank assessments. Mine are more like performance tasks. So if I give them a performance task, perhaps they've written a rap for me. One I just did was they had to explain the reasons for the fall of Rome by writing a rap. And then they turn that in. Then I might leave them some feedback. And I'm digging maybe for a little bit more. I want to know if they can maybe go a little bit deeper. And so then they can see my feedback and go a little bit deeper. And if we do that through, I use Google Drive. So if we're doing that through Google Drive, we can have that conversation, feedback, student gets the feedback. And that's what I think. I think it's got to be a conversation.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. Have you seen the history talk, the TikToks the history teachers are doing? So
No.
they give the same assignment like you're saying, and then they say, put it on TikTok. And the kids are coming up with these incredible history talk. It's like hashtag history talk. And it's really incredible the student work they're doing because they make it funny or they add an interest to it via, it's kind of like their own gateway of understanding, and that engages them. That's great.
I love that. I'm going to look into it. They really love the rap. Sometimes they choreograph it, and it's so funny. They do such a good job. It's so much fun.
Now, the example that you're giving, the students, they know what the assessment question is or performance task is in advance. So yes. I'm going to move to a question our superintendent asked. He wanted to know what people thought about, do you think students should see their assessments in advance?
I would say most of the time, yes. I mean, I've got to say that it can't be a blanket all of the time. Yes, I think it depends on the test, the assessment. I think it depends on the weight of it. You know, is it a big standardized test? Is it more of a classroom unit test? For me, in my class, almost always they see it first because they're presented with a choice board and learning goals. So they have learning, the goals, the mission that we're all on, and they know how to provide me with evidence of learning and what I'm looking for. And then can they do that once they know what it is that I'm looking for? And I provide them with resources with which to pull that evidence of learning and provide me with the evidence of learning. So in my class, yeah, most of the time.
It's interesting. I saw something on the internet, so I guess I can't prove it, but I saw a student was vlogging and it was a Harvard University student, and they were saying how I'm in Australia, but I can't go to my brand new university, and so I have to be up late at night. But what was interesting was it was an open book exam. So
Mhm.
she was taking open book Harvard University blue book exam. Remember those blue book exams?
Oh,
They
yes.
give you the blue book and you have to write your essay in it. I remember
Yes.
those. But it was open book, and the Harvard University professors say, here's your test question, and they knew it in advance too. Uh, and whatever you do, you can look at anything. Here are your resources. And I mean, that's what happens in medicine now. They say medical training, it used to be more about memorization. Law school used to be more about memorization, but more and more it's becoming teaching research skills.
Yeah,
And
because here's the thing. You can look anything you want up on Google.
yeah.
That's the world that we live in now. So the memorization skills just aren't that necessary anymore. It's a
And,
matter of how can I interact with this information and have a deeper understanding of it. And so I allow my kids to have open notes when on all of my assessments, whether they're performance tasks or the once in a while A, B, C, D. And I often tell them it's because it's much more important to me that you learn to be good note takers than you're going to get all of this stuff again in high school. Remembering these dates and these specific moments in history. It's much more important to me that you're learning these skills through the filter that is learning about history. Critical thinking skills, note-taking skills, research skills, huge, right? In the world of history. So I just graduated from college in 2015. I waited till my kids were all grown up. And most of my teachers, we're open notes. I think that's the way the world is going.
yeah, totally. I mean, we wouldn't tell our doctor, no, you can't look it up. We want our doctor to figure it out. And it's kind of like there's this book, it's Howard Gardner, he talks about disciplined minds. And what he means is like each subject is a discipline. And so if I have a social studies disciplined mind, that means I'm able to process the information, critical thinking, you said, research, you said, and these are skills, thinking skills that we use to process information with a social studies disciplined mind.
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah, teaching that's more important than learning and giving the kids opportunities to develop that more than memorization. Memorization's on the totem pole or the triangle or the hierarchy, but it's low. It's a first step, but it's not everything. It's not a higher order thinking skill.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
go back to this kind of question. Like, so I think we have a good understanding of what really good assessment can look like, the purpose of it for social studies especially. How can we tell we're doing an okay job though compared to last school year since we're online? What do you think is a good way to measure that?
That's the tricky part. I would agree that is tricky because I've been saying a lot lately, if I could only be looking over their shoulder while they're working, because that is what I usually do. I have them working on their choice board, whatever option they chose in my classroom while I'm walking around and helping and observing and prompting. It's really tricky in the virtual environment. And I know Joel did something really cool last year that I'm really thinking about doing this year, is setting up maybe 10-minute appointments, putting a spreadsheet out there and asking the kids to join me maybe twice a month for 10 minutes, where we can literally have a conversation about
Right.
what do you know? What do you want to know more about? What do you feel stuck on? I have the kids with their choice board. It's actually a piece of paper where they have the learning goals and then they have choices on how they're going to provide me with evidence of learning. When they turn that in, there's also a part where they have to self-evaluate, where they say, on these learning goals, they're written in kid-friendly language, on these learning goals, I feel that I'm at a 1, 2, 3, or 4, and this is why. And then they have to kind of self-evaluate and justify that to me. They find that a little tricky Because of course they want to say, well, I'm at a 4 because I know it all. And I'm like, well, let's dig a little deeper into that. And that's helping them to learn to evaluate themselves. So that helps some when I've have them doing that on paper, but I think a face-to-face or a Zoom to Zoom conversation for 10 minutes where I could do what I would do if I were looking over their shoulders. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So dig a little bit into that, check that out a little bit more. So when you say what I would usually do, so what I'm hearing is kind of a way to understand how we're doing compared to the past. It's really your experience and your professional norms of this is the result, and these are the conversations I usually have. So you're comparing your memory of what's happened in the past as the norm to what's
Yes.
happening now. And that's a way to tell how we're doing.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, you know, I might even in the past, I might take a small group of kids who I know are still struggling with the concept. You know, maybe they're having a hard time with citing and MLA or some skill. I might take them up at a table while everybody else is working on choice board. And then I could have some real one-on-one meaningful help in conversations. And that is nearly impossible to do on Zoom, because if I take them into a breakout room, then the rest of the kids are all kind of unrelated. So that, yeah, it's comparing this year to what I would usually do. That's where I find myself stuck.
What really impresses me about our school and our opportunities is, as a smaller independent school as compared to a gigantic school district in a public system, there's a huge amount of professional trust where, in order to say we are trusting the teachers to make that normative comparison in their own heads via their own experience, is something that I don't know if we were in a big school district with hundreds of campuses across a region of the state, could they do that? Or would it just turn into people saying, yeah, I'm fine, even though it's not? And
that is what would happen. And I think that it would be so micromanaged and prescribed. And I think that's actually what's happening. Just from working in the Florida school system, it's so micromanaged and prescribed, and there's data mining and there's data chats and there's all of these very specific parameters that you have to follow in order to report back on assessment. And there's very little professional trust. So boy, do I ever appreciate that about this place. It's huge.
I think there's kind of like because I like data, but I think it's misused and misunderstood a lot of the times. And there are okay and trusting ways to have conversations about what's available. But I think it's just got misused for years. And so there's rightfully so some bugaboos about it. And I totally
Yeah, well, it can be so easily manipulated is the thing. You know, it's like, okay, well, it was my assessment, I wrote it, and the assessment I wrote last time too, you know, like a benchmark writing test. And then, you know, if it's my rubric and it just doesn't seem like it's objective. So yeah, that I found myself kind of backed into that corner, where here I feel like I can, and I have the permission and the professional trust of my judgment to maybe do those 10-minute meetings where because I am honestly looking for that understanding, and then I can assess those kids from those conversations in addition to the performance tasks or whatever other assessment I have, and build my own idea, and that I'm trusted by the admin that I'm going to honestly do my best to assess them in that way. I really
are. And it's amazing that people are doing well now, considering the circumstances. And it's kind of like everyone has to have their social, emotional issues taken care of, and people have to be cared for first. And then once everything like that's okay, then we can move on and professionally do our duties there too.
So true.
It's important these days. Let's wrap it up. And you reminded me, I want to thank you for reminding me. One of my favorite articles I always go back to, I think I might have linked it in one of our workshops last year. It's this article about good assessment, and it just goes on and on and on about all these things. And at the very end, kind of the punchline to the story is the author just himself writes down, you know what, it all boils down to professional trust. Because
Yeah.
everything in a way is a judgment, and it's a teacher making a professional assessment, a judgment about something, even if you have a rubric. And except for rare math questions where the answer is 5 for sure, so much really is just judgment, and you have to trust people. And
Yes.
thank you for reminding us about that.
You're welcome.
Okay, let you get back to your duties and job, and thank you for everything.
Thank you. This was really great. Thanks for allowing me to participate.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.